Kia ora and welcome to another episode of the Leadership Lounge, a space for leaders in healthcare to just take a moment to breathe, to think, to stop, to then reboost and recharge, reset and get ready to get back out there and whatever the week is going to throw at you. I'm Katie and I've got a background of working in healthcare for about 30 years, and I now work with leaders in healthcare and their teams to help them manage the demands and the complexity of their roles so that they can feel hopeful and excited, so you can feel hopeful and excited about the incredible work that you do. Now, this episode could be renamed the episode of 1,000 cuts. That's what it feels like. So if you've been listening along, you know, and if you have been listening along, that's quite miraculous given the story I'm going to tell. So hiccup in terms of getting it onto Spotify. It's still working onto Apple, not getting it onto Spotify, and I have got help requests out all over the place, and I'll come to that in a minute. But in the spirit of being in the moment, testing new things, you know, all of that kind of stuff, I recorded an episode on my phone in the car the other day while we were out. And so sit down today to upload it, add in the music, get it up and going, and have a look at some of the information I've been sent around how to make it test that it's working properly. All ready for that. No. So I can't export the file in the way I would need to export to be able to then blend it. So I spent a bit of time fanning about in that space and then thought, okay, that's not working. Just re-record, go for your life, girl. And so that's been up to now relatively straightforward. I put the headphones on, plug it all into the microphone, click record, do a quick test. Then I get going and I start, and seriously, I rarely pause. I just kind of talk, and that's it. And I have the headphones on, and there's that kind of like weird feedback. And to be honest, I don't know if that's what's supposed to have been happening, but I don't know. But it wasn't happening this time. And every time I plugged the headphones in properly, I'd get an error message. So I'm like, okay, so I'm fanning around with that, and then Audacity, which is what I use to record onto, that's had an upgrade. So there was a few things in different places, and I was like, okay, maybe this is just a new thing. So I'm then searching some help videos and trying to work that one out. And it's like, nah. And so this was illustrating a couple of points to me that I think are very applicable when you're working in healthcare, when you're leading in healthcare, and you're faced with these kind of ridiculous kind of annoyances and setbacks that just kind of keep hitting at you. And so there's two things. There's the how easy is it to get completely distracted by solving the problem versus achieving the outcome. So the purpose of recording this podcast is exactly what I say at the beginning. It's to give you a moment of pause, to stop, think, take a breath, wherever you're listening to it, walking to work, in the car, on your commute, that just a bit of a, okay, it's all right, I'm not alone, it's not just me, there are weird things that happen out there, I can do this, I've got this, let's get going. It's that kind of thing. That's why I do this. That's the outcome. It's not about, obviously, not about the technical expertise. It's obviously not about getting it completely spot on perfect. I'm going to do a good job, but I'm not going to, if I've made a little bit of a hiccup here and there, I'm prepared to learn from that. But it would have been so easy this morning to just sit. I started watching one of the help YouTube videos about it, and I was kind of quite interested because it was teaching me a lot about the program that I didn't know. So I thought, I could keep going with that. I was like, nah, Kate, you got to get this done. So I like the tension in one of those conundrums that we can often have. And many people that I speak to talk about this drive and need for doing a good job and being perfect and everything being just right. And there's some commendableness in that. I've also learnt to embrace that phrase, done is better than perfect. So, getting something out there, achieving the outcome, getting the work done is better than not doing it at all because you spend all your time trying to get it perfected and just spot on. I read a book recently, and it was more about that, the different end of that philosophy around, if you want to be good at something, you have to put in the work, you have to do the practice, you have to make those efforts. So I was kind of like enjoying the sitting with the tension of those kind of different conundrums that we often come up with because, you're in the roles that you're in for a good reason. You care about the work that you do and you want it to be good work. And equally, you're under an extreme amount of pressure and demands to do more and more with less and less every single day. And so holding those tensions is actually part of the work. It's part of leadership development, being able to hold two kind of opposing ideas and find your way. And the wisdom is knowing at what point do I push on and try and perfect this or make it a bit better or keep or solve the problem versus the point of I need to get the work done. I need to produce this outcome. So for me, this is okay, you can park these YouTube videos that are interesting and when you've got other time, but actually today's job, this couple of hours, you need to get the podcast done. That's the purpose of this time you've set yourself. So there's a beautiful tension in those spaces that we can often be grappling with. I would for some reason, the first example that's coming to my head is the idea of writing a roster, which was never, ever my strong point. But I would, spend hours over the details of it and making sure that we've met the union requirements, we've got the right people there and the right skill mix and all of this. And it can take hours and hours and hours. And actually, when you put a roster out, that there'll be a lot of changes afterwards. You'll have the unforeseen sick calls, you will have the shift swaps that always come in. And so was the striving for this perfect roster actually the best use of my time, I guess? Equally, and that brings me to my second point, though slightly earlier than I anticipated, was this idea of asking for help. So I think I'll wrap up and park that contest there between the thing I'm thinking about, which is that problems come up. You're trying to solve a problem, you're trying to write a business case, or you're trying to, I don't know, whatever it is you're trying to do. I've now lost all possible examples. You're trying to do what you're trying to do, and little hiccups come along and little things don't work, and you can suddenly find yourself in that mix of I've got to get this right, I've got to get to this right, and it can completely distract you from what you're actually trying to achieve. So I guess what I'm saying is you've got to be really clear on what you're trying to achieve, what your purpose is around this thing that you're doing. What is it aiming to do? Sometimes we can be working on quality improvement projects are a good example, particularly that idea of incident reporting. An incident has gone on, you've got a whole load of these reported incidents in whatever safety management system you're using. Is your goal to learn from those, to educate, to improve the system, to make things better, to prevent harm, or is it to close them all down and make sure that the targets are met in terms of days to completed records and all of that sort of stuff that you have to do? So both of those things are important. We shouldn't have a whole load of unopened, unreviewed cases on our safety management system. But equally, focusing on closing them versus what can we learn from them produces a slightly different angle. I don't know if I've steered off the point a little bit too much there, but I think it's about what are we trying to achieve here? What is the purpose and the point of the work that we're doing? And when a problem comes up or a challenge arises, something doesn't work or something's not flowing, you've got to make sure that you stop and pause every now and again and goes, what am I actually trying to achieve here? Is this helping me right now? And that's in that context of you don't have all the time in the world. You've got limited time. Okay, I could go on. I'm tying myself up in knots over the examples. So the second point, and that's what I was talking about, the roster, and it was actually what I did record in the podcast I recorded on my phone in the car, was this getting comfortable with asking for help, and the myths that exist and that are out there around that if we ask for help, we are failing. If we ask for help, we are not coping. We are not competent. There's a kind of a bazillion, is that an actual word? A gazillion, however many, lots. We have lists of reasons why asking for help is seemingly hard. I think there's, healthcare is a hierarchical system, and there has been this kind of heroic story about I'm the leader, I'm in charge, I can rescue you. And that comes from a number of places on the number of occasions where, as healthcare workers, you are the hero rescuing people and saving lives. And so we translate that into how we lead, which is not, sometimes it's useful, but not all the time is it useful. And so if we have stepped into a role and it's like, oh my goodness, leaders are the heroes, they're the people that know things, asking for help can actually be a big kind of shift from what you've kind of grown up with. So yeah, there's that idea that it's seen as weakness. We're worried about how we're going to get judged. We're going to be worried about how we're going to explain ourselves. No one else is going to understand this problem. And I guess that's one of the reasons why A, I do the email, and B, I do the podcast and the work that I do in that kind of, that opening arms kind of approach to the fact that we all struggle with these problems. We all have these pain points and these challenges. And actually, when we drop that veneer or armor that we wear, we realize, yeah, we are all in this together, and actually we have all got the same problem. One of the other reasons we can not ask for help is that we're actually going to be rejected or excluded, oh goodness, for whatever reason, whether that be, oh my goodness, A, they've got that problem, or B, who on earth do they think they are asking for help? Can't they cope? Can't they keep up? You might not think that you're deserving of receiving help. You haven't worked hard enough. You've not done enough hours this week. You're not busy enough. You're not important enough. You might not think you deserve help. And like I said, we can just associate it with the fact that, that says that we're incompetent and we're not coping, and that leads to that judgment space. So there's all those kind of things, those stories that could be going on in your head about asking for help. And I recalled a time when, well, now I'm also thinking about the roster stuff. So there's a couple of things here. So when I think about me sitting there and writing that roster, took me forever. It was the most painful thing I've ever done, and I tried for 2 months. The roster was one of the main complaints from the staff that I was leading at the time, and I had sat with the person from the union to try and understand some of the challenges and what their perspective was. I was seeking as much help as I can. The spreadsheet that they were using was phenomenal, so that was really helpful. So that was great, but it was just nightmare, absolute nightmare for me. And yeah, so I was trying really, really hard. But equally, and there were some parts of that heroic, I'm the leader, I should do the roster. I'm the leader, I should know how to do the roster. This kind of little bit of a story in my head. But thankfully, I'm potentially a quick learner, and I was kind of like, this is not worth my time and energy and pain to do this. There is somebody here that can do this better than me. And there was. So asking them to do that was a massive relief. B, they were very, very willing. They really enjoyed that. The idea of those things, they've got experience in it. They were great at it. It was using their strengths and skills. So I think there's this juxtaposition there. I'm just making up words today. There's this beautiful thing that happens there in the fact that when you acknowledge you need help, it's either you're not your strength or you've not learned that skill yet. Asking somebody for help gives them that opportunity to use their strengths and their skills. It can light their days up. We often can look at staff and think, oh my God, everyone's too busy. I need to do it all. I don't want to give them more work to do. But we forget that when we're giving somebody something to do that energizes them, that's okay. You're not adding another drudgery job that they don't enjoy onto their shoulders, which drains them, depletes them of energy and all that stuff. You're giving them something to do that is in their zone of genius, to quote Daria Williamson, and it is something that's going to light them up and give them energy. So there you go. One reason that asking for help is not such a bad thing. Adam Grant wrote, I haven't got the quote in front of me or the social media post in front of me, but he wrote this thing around how people are more willing to help than we realise. So I think there's those couple of things. A, you're building up your team, you're giving them something to work on that's going to energise them, that's their strengths, but it's also sharing the load. I think that's another thing that's really important right now, is realising that if we're not in this alone, that people share similar kind of problems and frustrations and challenges, sharing that load means that we're all carrying something a bit lighter. It means that it's not all on just your shoulders. It's okay that we spread the load, and that's going to make it easier for us, because like I frequently write about and say, this is about being in the long game. Healthcare is always going to need to be delivered. Healthcare is always going to be facing demands and challenges. This is about how do you set yourself up for playing the long game. So then it's that idea. So then what we're left with, if people are more willing to help than we realise, if it's actually a way of empowering and building up our teams and developing people and playing to their strengths and energising people, all great stuff, then we've got the internal thing to deal with. We've got this thing about, I feel judged. I'm not worthy or not deserving of asking for help, or that feeling of I should know this because I'm the leader. Now, if they're the stories that are going on in your head, that this is work for you to think about. I'm not here to convince you otherwise, but this is what I've learned, is that we build connection with each other by being vulnerable. Sometimes some of the people that have inspired me the most at the end of a day are the people that have just come to me and gone, you know what, I'm not coping, I need this help. I can't do this. They're the people that inspire me. And they inspire me because I have connected with them in a very real way. So when you're asking for help, yes, you're being authentic. Yes, you're being vulnerable. And that is what drives trust and drives connection. And when we have trust and we have connection, then without wanting to sound too cheesy, that's kind of the start of all the great stuff that we can do together. So we kind of can know that. We kind of know that from a logical point of view. Yes, I know that being vulnerable helps me connect with people, and yes, I know it builds trust. Doing it can be a completely different thing, particularly if you're in that space where the heroic model of leadership is the role modelled version. I'm the leader, I can do all this, I've got this, I work all hours of the day to get work done because I don't need help from everybody because I'm so flippin' marvellous. And you know what? You just have to take a breath and ask for help anyway. So the reflection I made in the car yesterday when I was recording on my phone was that I had got a lot more comfortable with asking for help sooner. And when I reflect back, there's one story that just popped into my mind when I was recording was this. I was in a job. I was trying to figure out what this thing was I was supposed to be doing. The job was vaguer than I thought when I started. And there was this thing I had to do. And I thought I had the instructions, and I'd asked a couple of times, and I really thought I couldn't ask anymore, and I bumbled my way through it. And to be fair, I think I messed it up quite significantly. And praise the Lord, had a human being as a boss who valued my learning from a very kind of, he used the phrase that I will often use and encourage people to use, talk me through your thinking on this. So it helped me to reflect, well, actually I wasn't really thinking, and actually I didn't know what I was doing there, and actually I should have asked for help. So I know the uncomfortableness of them messing it up, not getting it right, and then kind of having to relive the pain of all of that when asked to explain it. And I did think, oh yeah, if I'd actually asked for help sooner, I could have done that with somebody. It was worse than the roster. At least I knew what a roster should look like at the end. I had no idea of what I was aiming for on this project. So asking for help is something that comes with practice. And once you've done it once, and you do it in that first, if you're really worried about this, you do it with that person that you feel very safe and trusted with. Or you set yourself up as an experiment. Oh, I'm going to ask for help for something one day this month. Start slow. So that reflection yesterday was that the podcast's not working. So we're now into week 3 of it not asking, and I asked for help after the first time. It's like, I don't know what's going on. So I reached out to the first couple of people. The first kind of lot of advice didn't work. So I then spread the net a bit wider, and I have no compunction. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I really need some help. And yes, come in, take over. Just tell me what to do. I'm not feeling bashful about this. I'm focused on the outcome. So asking for help, people are more willing to help than you realise. It is a way of building energy, connection, energy, and empowering other people. And yes, it's about role modelling who you are as a leader, which is the last point around asking for help. So if we take it right on down at this idea of we look to our leaders and we follow the role modelling, the example that they set. If you're a leader that doesn't ask for help, that flows on down to the people that you lead. And if we're putting this into the healthcare setting, that will go right down to people who are patient-facing. And when they are sitting with something that they don't know how to do it, they're not sure how to do it, it's something they've never done before, are they going to ask for help, or are they going to bumble through the best way they can? Not sure how to mix up that drug, but I think it's something like this. Not sure quite how to do this dressing, but I think it's something like this. Not sure what information I need to give about this, but I think it's something around that. We need staff at all levels to be able to ask for help. It is one of those components of psychological safety, but it is also crucial to how care gets delivered to the people that we are trying to serve. And one of those ways that you can set a culture for it's okay to ask for help when you don't know something is to role model that, because your teams are going to follow your lead. And like we said, if it's a very hierarchical system, then that kind of flows up and down. So wherever you are in the system, you role modelling asking for help is going to have an impact at that patient-facing space. So with no notes, I now have to try and remember the kind of the sum up. This is what they teach you when you read things about how to do a podcast. Do a sum up at the end, a summary of what you've been talking about. I think at the beginning we were talking about how easy it is to get diverted and focus on solving the problem versus delivering the outcome of what you're trying to achieve. And so being really clear on what that is and having those kind of stop points to remind yourself, hey, is this what I'm really after? And then we talked about the asking for help, and the roster was the roster business was the bridge, if you like, between the two topics, although I had no idea that was going to happen. And asking for help is difficult for a range of reasons, and you'll have your reason or reasons. But actually there are a lot of bonuses from asking for help. A, you're empowering other people around you. B, they're more likely to help than you realise, and they'll be quite excited to work alongside you or work with you. And secondly, you're going to build connection and trust by being authentic and by being vulnerable, and that's where that starts from. And B, you're role modelling to people that it's okay to ask for help, and that in the healthcare setting that is crucial. So there we are for this week. Thank you very much for listening along. If I've sounded that kind of like little bit of it's still weird not doing it with the headphones. So it's kind of like it's got a different feel for it. So, hey ho. Let's see. Well, let's see how we go with my next challenge, which is the following round 3 of the instructions around how to check if I can get this working to Spotify. If not, never fear. If you're listening to this is daft, really, isn't it? I'm saying if you can't listen to it, go here. That makes no sense. Anyway, available at on the website www.katiequinney.com, and there'll be the link to the podcast. There's a place to subscribe. There are some freebie things to download. Yes, subscribe to the weekly email, which is, again, you've got an inbox full of stuff. The email I send is that bright spot in your inbox that you click on and you go, it's all right, we've got this. It's all right. We're just going to keep going. We've got it. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Leadership Lounge. I am keeping my fingers crossed this is all working. Like I said, you don't come here for the technical expertise. I'm going to use that line frequently for the next week, I would say. Have a wonderful week. I'm Katie. It's been a pleasure talking to you again this week, and you take care, and I will see you next week in another episode of The Leadership Lounge.